dream. I was flying high, I was feeling fine. I won't be put in line, 'cause I'm ready to do my time.
Simply Financial with Christopher Calandra, Certified Financial Planner, is an innovative, comprehensive, informative, and cutting-edge podcast that discusses financial topics ranging from personal finance, economics, politics, and personal growth. Simply Financial will cover intriguing and thought-provoking questions so that the listener can simply increase their financial IQ.
Welcome to episode 46, season number 3 of the Simply Financial podcast. Hopefully you listened to last week's episode, which was part 1 of my interview with John Hyre. If you haven't, I would recommend stop this episode and go back to last week's episode. Then it'll make the most sense. Once you've listened to that, you definitely want to listen to the finish of my discussion with John. It's an excellent one. I think you'll enjoy it. I talk with folks about having a wealth building plan in the sense of, take inventory of what you have in terms of intellectual capital, what assets you currently have, what income you're going to expect from one or more sources, and then to figure out how you could position your assets to build wealth. So just an easy classic example, you work, you make X number of dollars, how much of those dollars are going to go to live your life, pay the bills, enjoy yourself, and how much of that income can you use to build wealth, whether that's to put it in a 401k, invest in real estate, a college fund, build up a bank emergency fund, pay down debt, student loans, credit cards, car loans, that kind of thing. If you could come up with a number that you want to build wealth with from this upcoming year's income, then you could work with your professional team, your accountants, hopefully you're a financial planner like I am. I'll raise my hand to help on that. And then to figure out how to deploy that money the most effective way to build wealth that's consistent with your goals and objectives. Does that make sense?
Oh, heck yeah. Heck yeah. And there are a lot of personal decisions involved there. How much do you really need? I'm all for living well, and I do. But sometimes, our culture has strengths and weaknesses, and traveling the world, speaking a few languages, I get to see some of that from the outside. Americans at times tend to want more than is necessary to be happy. On the other hand, they're also a very productive, hardworking people. So I guess it depends on what you want. It goes back to that why.
Sure.
In our personal case, we live well, but not extravagantly, so it makes it a lot easier to be free, which matters more to me.
So at this stage of the game, this might be an unfair question, but you'll maybe just have to deal with it or say I won't answer. But at this stage of the game, if you had a choice for increasing income or having more leisure time, non-work time, you would start to gravitate to the latter, right?
Yeah, I'm planning on it. Because of our status in Puerto Rico and because our kids all are in college now, this is the first year that's happened, I'm actually able to focus more on the business than I have in the past. We're very pleased with the kids. We focused on bringing them up well and enjoying our time with them, and we have. And they want to be around us, and they come visit us. But I'm able to focus on the practice in a way that I could not for the last 20 years. And that's not a complaint. That was a choice, a deliberate choice, and I'm happy I made it. So for the next 4 to 5 years, it's increased the income and build a system. And then just as grandkids start to show up, which we've already discussed with the kids, the plans on that, I start to back off, start to let people in the practice have an equity stake and focus more on the big hard issues that they bring to me and continue to make the rain, but start to back off some and let them have some ownership. So that's, for us, the plan. And it's based totally on where we're at in life.
So it seems to me that people that might be listening, a certain aspect of the audience, they're going to be not intimidated by the idea you need to have a wealth building plan. But I just wanted to talk with you a bit, John, about this doesn't need to be some 40-hour project that you can do the basics of, I want to max out, I'm just using these as examples, I want to max out my 401k. I want to reduce my mortgage by X number of dollars by the end of the year. I want to, fund my child's college fund to X. Things like that. I don't want people that listen and think, have a wealth building plan. That can be very, could be a big project depending on the complexity and the wealth that you've already created. But at its basic level, this is not something that's going to require a ton of time to prepare. But by doing this, you set yourself up for success because, like with the goal setting, I think if you don't have a wealth building plan of some sort, and ideally would be in writing like your goals, you're not likely to be as efficient in winning with money because, as you just described, life is hectic. We're all pulled in multiple directions, and we have to juggle various priorities. And so being purposeful in creating wealth, not because money is the most important thing, it's not, but it is pretty important. And when you are financially fit, life tends to be easier than when you're not. So can you just speak to people that are listening about the simplicity of this, that it doesn't need to be a scary, intimidating thing to have a wealth building plan?
Well, that's the goal. That's part of why we have the other principle, the team. Right? The team shoulders a lot of the burden. You still have to be in charge and direct it. You have to have a sense of who you are and what you want. That may not be large. It may or may not be complex. A lot of that depends on you. But there are others who implement that. I don't manage my own properties due to lack of time, and frankly, I'm not very good at it. There are others who do that. So in terms of my time, it's reviewing what they do once the system is in place. When it comes to planning, it reminded me of a great quote from Eisenhower. Plans are useless. Planning is invaluable. In other words, plans never last. They always change. They never survive contact with reality. But having done the planning when things change, you've got a system in place that allows you to adapt. You've thought ahead about how to react to certain things. Is it going to be large or complex? That depends on you. I think that's subjectively driven. It doesn't have to be, I think, is the point you're making. And if you want it to be simpler, that's fine. Understand what that means and where it gets you. It's neither good nor bad. It's so subjective and choice-based, as is where you're at in life. Someone who's just getting started, young, hungry, maybe doesn't have kids yet. People are waiting longer and longer for that. They've got time to hit career in their younger years in a way that at least our generation did that a little bit differently. So that's another thing to think about, the timing of all this. That is different from the newer generations.
I love the Eisenhower quote. I'm not sure if I was ever exposed to it, but it's funny, Eisenhower's kind of run through this conversation because you talked earlier about, doing things that are urgent, and I don't have the graphic for folks that go to this podcast at my website. We'll include it. But you ever look at Eisenhower has the, I forget what it's called, but it's a quadrant, and it's urgent, what's important. Here at Elliott Wealth Management, my team and I, it's something that we really stay aware of because a lot of people do what's urgent as opposed to what's important. And if you only do what's urgent and never get to what's important, you're going to end up failing in whatever was supposed to be done in the important quadrant. And I know it's tough to talk about because I don't have the visual, but you sound like you're familiar with it. I think that's one of the most impressive, simple pieces I've seen on time management and increasing effectiveness.
He was so underrated. He actually went out of his way to kind of look like the bumbling oaf who just played golf a lot. He liked people to underestimate him, and then he would hand them their heads. Going back to Hitler, ask old Adolf how that worked out for him.
Sure. No, that's good. That's good. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is tracking progress. And so in my 7 wealth building rules, John, a number of them are my spin on what's out there a lot, setting goals, building a team. But I think tracking progress, if there's one of the 7 that I think is underutilized utilized or not spoken about enough, I think, is tracking progress. Because we talked about the goals, the preparation, have a wealth building plan, talked about how you need a team, but I find that not enough attention is paid to tracking progress. So let me give you an example. In my household, and we've done this for a while now, and it's been enormously successful, is we keep track of our net worth statement. In business, it's a balance sheet. A business keeps track of its assets and its liabilities. We do that at the personal level. So every quarter, I add up all of my assets, and when you have debt, you add up all of your debt. And the way that you figure out your net worth is simply to subtract your, and by the way, John, I know you know this is for people that are listening, is the way that you figure out your net worth is you take your assets and subtract out your debts, and that will give you your net worth. And this really distills down how you're doing with money to its very basic level, because you want to build wealth over time, and this net worth statement is going to tell you how well you're doing at the money game. It's not the most important thing, but it's pretty important. And there's really only two levers you could pull, John. You could increase the assets, right? Common sense. Or you could decrease your debts, at least until they get to zero. And figuring out how to build your assets and reduce your debts, if you have any, is a pretty good way to track your progress to see how you're doing with money. What do you think about that strategy?
Again, if you don't have a measurable metric, that means whatever you're doing doesn't really get measured. And if it doesn't get measured, you'll never do as well as you could have done. And for most people, you'll actually do rather poorly. Measuring is key. You can come up with good metrics. That's a great thing to talk to your advisors about, is what is a good metric? How do we measure it? Is this an efficient thing? In other words, is the amount of time spent measuring it producing a good enough result? Then you have to follow the metric, even if you don't like what it's telling you.
Yes, I find it very motivational, because looking at it each quarter, and my wife Joelle and I, we sit down and we go through it. It's not, again, hours at a time. It's like a 10 or 15-minute conversation, and that helps with, hey, we set some goals. Are we achieving the goals? Are we winning with money? Have we had setbacks? We're going to be able to see it here, and it's very motivational that I could go back quarter after quarter over these last bunch of years to be able to see how my wealth has grown. Years ago I had debt, and now I don't, and that in and of itself is very satisfying. But along the way, I was able to see how my debt was coming down as I paid off debt aggressively, as debt was retired. I was able to see that on my net worth statement. Additionally, as I add to my 401k and other investments and assets, including real estate, I would see my assets go up. Now, for example, I have a daughter in college. My son is not in college yet, but we built up the college fund. Now I see on my net worth statement the college fund is coming down as I pay the tuition. That part of the asset section on my net worth statement is declining. Now that's by design. It's not worrisome, but it really is an easy way to see what's happening with your money. And I think it's really underutilized out there. I'm a big fan of, you want to do one thing that you're not doing now, even if you're successful, create a net worth statement. You could do it on a spreadsheet. You could just do it on paper and pen. We have here at Elliott Wealth Management some great financial planning software where it gets calculated by the software, because you can link your investment accounts, your mortgage, your credit cards, your bank accounts, all feed into the system, and then your net worth statement is created leveraging this technology. So there's a lot of ways you could do it, old-fashioned, all the way up to leveraging some really great modern technology, but I'm a big believer in that. I also think tracking progress for entrepreneurs, especially that often have multiple streams of income, is also to have a spreadsheet or some way to see where you're getting income from. If you have a couple of properties,